Bluebet Stadium, Panthers versus Rabbitohs, a couple of years ago, grand final rematch. Prelim rematch. Panthers have basically knocked the Rabbitohs out. I think it's like 3 years running.
Well, there's no feeling lost between these two clubs, that's for sure.
None at all.
So they'll be pretty fired up for this one, particularly Penrith, I believe. I think they'll be stinging out of that first round loss. And I know they said, the loss in the World Club Challenge, it was a bit of a World Club Challenge, but they would have wanted to win that one.
Mm-hmm.
So out of that first up loss, I think a bit would have been spoken about their form at home as well, not wanting to continue these run of losses. If they lose this one, it's 3 straight at Penrith, which they haven't done for a long, long time. So I think I'm expecting a very different looking Penrith Panthers side against the Rabbitohs this time around. One forced change, of course. Sorensen's out, concussion. He's replaced by Matty Eisenhuth. But a few changes for the Rabbits. Totola, Jai Arrow are both going to miss the game. Latrell, they said he's okay. He got through the session, I think, this morning.
Yep.
Knee was strapped up, but he got through it. So that's a great thing for the Rabbits, him being in the side. But I just think Penrith, I think Penrith have got a lot to play for in this game. They'll come out and win.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think the Penny Panthers have got a lot to play for. And, the last week it was kind of I've seen Nathan Cleary disappointed, plenty of times because he's a competitor.
Yep.
But it was probably the first time I'd seen him angry. He seemed quite angry at the way they'd lost. And I love to see that from a guy like Cleary.
Frustrated?
Yeah, and just like really disappointed in, the way that they played, the way they've turned up for a second game in a row at Penrith.
Yep.
And I love to see that from a club captain where it matters if you lose at home.
It's high standards, eh?
Yeah.
Well, it matters. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you're playing. It matters all the time. Like they needed to go out and play, and obviously, Nathan would understand that they were far from their best, and it's well below the standards that they expect from themselves, and from each other. Hence, the words that Salmon and Luai had after the match, which a lot of people spoke about, but it happens every game. That happens.
Literally every game.
Not ideal. The location and where it happened. There just so happened to be a camera there. You could see actually one of the boys. It might have been Matty Eisenhuth.
He stood in front of it.
Come around there and just said, "Hey boys, just let's wait till we get inside." But that's just holding each other accountable for our actions, and all the best teams have those tough and difficult conversations.
You've got to. It would be bizarre if you didn't.
Well, if you let things slide, then no one improves. Individuals don't improve, and if individuals don't improve, the teams don't improve. So, that's just they're in that position now, and they're dual premiership winners, consecutive premiership winners because of that reason. Is that they set high standards for each other.
Now we've spoken about Cleary, but let's have a talk about Lachlan Ilias. He was outstanding last week.
Yeah.
Now, do you think? Look, I think they're missing too many of their, forwards to kind of get the win. But I got to say, what a great test for Lachlan Ilias. He goes to Shark Park. They get their first win in a very long time.
Yep.
Now he's going to Bluebet Stadium out of the Panthers. What an opportunity for the young fella.
Yeah, well, it's possibly the most difficult game on the road in all of the competition. You probably throw Melbourne in there as well. But at the moment, going out to Penrith is a very difficult one, but super impressed with his performance in round one. And you could see, his performances through last year, the way he built throughout the season, that, he's going to be a special half. He's going to be a special talent in our game. He's still got a lot to learn. He's only a young man. Great to see him bounce back. Like, he had a bit of an off game last year. I think it was against the Dragons down at Wollongong when Demetrio, he threw the old hook out.
Got the captain cook.
Dragged him off the field, which in my opinion, I thought was a little bit unfair. I thought there was a couple of more experienced players that were playing just to, not playing all that well either. But he was the one that copped the hook. But great to see the young fella bounce back. I know that would be so far from his mind. I just brought it back. I just brought it up to say it's great to see him bounce back. But it's been a long off season, and he's put a lot of work into his footy over the preseason. Played extremely well. Good test for him. Good test for him coming up against reigning premiers. Some quality halves on the other side of the field that he's matched up against too. I think he'll do a good job, but I just think the Panthers they'll be stinging off the last couple of matches that they played.
Yeah, for sure. And with Lachlan Ilias, what I loved about his game last week was he's no longer, like, obviously he's, second fiddle to Cody Walker. Cody Walker's a veteran, but he's no longer almost waiting for Cody Walker to say, can you do this or can you do this? He's saying, I've got something to offer.
Well, he's taking initiative.
Yeah.
And that comes through time on the park and a little bit of maturity with your football and as a person, but just feeling the confidence of, hey, listen, I've got things to offer this footy side. I'm going to go do it when I see the opportunity to do it.
Now, Combank Stadium, Eels versus Sharks, both teams coming off losses. Sean Russell comes into the wing for Isaac Lumi, and the Sharks, Wade Graham suspended, Jack Williams concussion, they're out. Connor Tracy and Royce Hunt, not bad replacements if I say so myself. How do you see this game playing out,
Yeah,
Smithy?
fair replacements. But yeah, again, just missing some key players, the Sharkies, and Parramatta. They wouldn't have been happy with their game against the Storm, particularly their second half. I thought their first 40 was pretty
great.
Good. First 40 were great. I thought Josh Hodgson coming back from ACL injury was super impressive in his first 40 minutes. I'd like to see a little bit more from Brown though. I just thought Dylan Brown was relatively quiet. When Parramatta are playing well, I just feel as though he's got much more involvement than what he did in round one. Yeah, he's a great runner of the football. He's got lovely hands. He's got good combinations with his outside men, but he's a dangerous ball carrier.
Yeah.
So when he's a lot like Munster. When the ball goes to Munster, things happen. Things happen, and the other team, they're on high alert. The same for Dylan Brown. I think he just needs to get the ball in his hands a lot more than what he did last week. And they'll be keen to bounce back from that first up loss, particularly at home. They're at home again, round 2. Sharkies will be desperate. I think we'll see a very different performance from them. But I think the Eels too good in this one.
Do you think Dylan Brown struggled with two things? Sean Lane not being outside him, so with confidence.
Yeah.
And then Hodgson being a new hooker and also being a much more willing to take control and run the ball compared to Reid Marnie.
Yeah.
Reid Marnie's role at the Eels was just get the ball off the deck.
Yeah.
Whereas his role at Doggies is very different now, which is good to see. Do you think that affected Brown at all?
Or possibly. Hodgson being a much more dominant style player to Reid Marnie. And again, like we talk about time on the paddock and combinations, it takes time. Like no matter how much time you spend in the preseason out in the training field, and maybe a couple of preseason games in the trials, but it takes time for those combinations to build. I think having a dominant 9 there is great, but at the same time, when you know that you're a great runner of the football, you're a dangerous runner of the football, and if you want the ball, you need to get it.
Yeah.
Dylan Brown's, he's not a rookie. He's been around for a long time. He's played Test football. I think he just needs to demand the ball when he wants it.
Okay. And the Sharkies, do you think it's just defense?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. That like when they were winning football games last year, like they ended up in the top 4. That wasn't a fluke. That was off the back of pretty stingy defense. When they were working as a team, everyone was on the same page defensively, working as a unit. No one trying to do it one out. I think that will be, well, it should be the message from Craig Fitzgibbon this week, which I think it will be. He's a very defensive-minded coach. I think that'll be what he pushes this week, is to say, hey, listen, we're coming up against a side that they do have plenty of points in them, but we've got some strategies in place that we need to implement to stop that.
It's the Sharks are interesting. I think they missed over 50 tackles on the weekend.
Yeah, that's just not good enough at that level.
Yeah, which is so surprising because that's what they built their season on.
Yep, absolutely.
So hopefully they can sort it out, because I think the Sharkies are in for a big year. I really do. But let's get into the big match of the round for me personally anyway, the derby, Broncos versus Cowboys. Reece Walsh returns at fullback. And interesting, he's actually making his club debut, which is a great moment for Reece Walsh. Selwyn Cobbo to the wing. Arthur goes to 18th man. Cowboys, no changes to the 17 who beat the Raiders last week. How do you see this game playing out, Smithy?
This could be a classic. A few years back when Broncos and Cowboys used to play each other, and it was always Golden Point. I don't know how that ended up that way, but it was just every time
game
it was Golden Point. It was just It could be that way again. I'm leaning towards the Cowboys, though, just because unchanged lineup from last week. They just snuck home against the Raiders, but I've got high hopes for the Cowboys this year.
That first half, they looked incredible.
Yeah, they look really good. Scotty Drinkwater, your man,
Yep.
was outstanding. Tommy Dearden was great. Chad Townsend playing really well. Like all their players are playing really well. But they're coming up against the side that just beat the reigning premiers, and the Broncos are back at home. They played on the road, played a great game on the road last week. The trap that I guess the Broncos could fall into would be turning up or preparing this week thinking, wow, we beat Penrith. We'll beat anyone. But the importance of just enjoying the win and then putting it to bed and then moving on to the next opposition is vitally important, particularly for the Broncos. Just can't get carried away with one win, especially this early in the competition. Fantastic that Reece Walsh is playing fullback. Really excited to see how he goes with the one jersey on his back. We spoke earlier about Cobbo going back to the wing. Mate, I've got the Cowboys in this one. I'm not prepared to say by a big margin, but I've got the Cowboys beating the Broncos.
It's really interesting because they're relatively similar squads in a similar... I mean, obviously, Cowboys are doing better because of our finals footy last year.
Yep, both relatively sort of young squads.
Got sevens that play similar-ish kind of footy.
Yep, experienced halves, leading the team around.
Gun silky fullbacks that are quite silky with the ball in hand.
Yep. What are your thoughts?
Okay, look.
I don't think you're going to tip the Broncos, but just your preview of the match. How do you think it'll all play out?
Well, I am going to tip the Bronx.
Yes.
I'm going to tip the Bronx
of course.
because I think the only reason I'm going to tick the Bronx is because of their defence last week.
Okay.
And, the fact that they kept the
fair point.
Panthers to 12 points, whereas the Raiders, although I would say, the Cowboys, I thought their first half was the best half of any half in the round one.
Okay.
The fact that they allowed the Raiders to score 18 points in one half and basically lost the second half.
Yep.
I think that the Broncos can get the job done because of obviously they're on the back of their defence. And, they basically controlled the match against Panthers. It took the last 10 minutes with a bunch of different errors for the Broncos to allow Panthers back into the game. But if Corey Oates doesn't drop that first ball, and I love Big Oatesy, but Broncos go on to potentially score again, or at the very least, just dominate field position.
Yep.
So I reckon Broncos get the job done. But it's going to be really interesting to see how Todd Payten handles the Cowboys win because great win, great signs, but also bad signs.
Yes.
It's
look, I don't know Todd Payten well, but just talking to the people involved with the Cowboys, and speaking with Jonathan Thurston, knowing Todd Payten, like he will be onto him. He's the type of guy that he won't sort of sweep anything under the carpet after that win. Win's great, sure, but I don't think he would have let them get away with that second half, that 40 minutes that you said where they let Canberra back into the game. They nearly stole the game off them. It was only for a Chad Townsend field goal that got it home for them up there in Townsville. So I think he'll have them well prepared. I feel as though it'll be almost like a loss for them in round one, if you know what I mean. With the way they reviewed that match to say, hey, boys, like, this isn't good enough. Yeah, sure, we got to win, but they would have treated it more like a performance that they weren't happy with. And I'd like to think when you got experienced guys like Val Holmes, Peter Hiku, Chad Townsend in there, they would have been on top of the players as well, saying, hey, look, great win, but we need to be much better than that if we want to do something in this competition. The matchup I'm really excited for though is the Sixers.
Yeah,
Ezra Mann was really good last week.
Yeah.
Some of the hits he put on, he's a chunky little fella,
mate. And vice versa, the strength Dearden had in attack, he was breaking tackles.
Yeah. Loves running the footy.
They're both like really strong around the hips.
Yeah, because
they're little fellas.
They're not huge men.
Yeah.
Like in today's
game.
Oh,
mate.
Like they're both under 6 foot. They'd be roughly, I don't know, what, 90 kilos, 92 kilos?
Max, I'd say, yeah.
Like heavy, but I actually loved the matchup of those two young fellas going toe-to-toe on Friday.
Absolutely. So, great game. Cannot wait to watch it. Now, the thing with the Cowboys is they've set the bar so high. They've shown round one, the first half, a completion rate of 90%.
Yep.
And silky footy like that.
Yep.
So imagine what they could do by the end of the year. Very, very exciting. Now let's head to Roosters versus the Warriors. Allianz Stadium. Joey Manu returns at centre. Drew Hutchison moves to the bench. Matt Lodge is out. I think he's got a face fracture, basically a divot or something like that.
Yeah, no, he had a head clash.
Yep. Replaced by Fletcher Baker at prop, with Jared Warrior-Hargreaves still on the sidelines. Warriors are unchanged after their win over the Knights last week. How do you see this playing out, Smithy?
Joey Manu, massive in. I think they missed him a lot last week. I know Hutchison, he was out there doing his best. Drew, he's an experienced player, but having a guy that is a genuine centre will make a huge difference to their footy. I think they just missed him in like some crucial moments, I believe. Like he done so much for them with the ball last year. It was Tedesco and Joey Manu they were combining for like ridiculous amounts of running meters last year. Got him out of a lot of trouble. Or if they needed an inspirational run, he'd come up with it, or an inspirational play. Huge in for them. This is 15th versus 5th. You would have thought it would have been the other way around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You would have thought Roosters would have been sitting in the top 8, but the Warriors are 5th. Good on them. They had a strong win in windy Wellington against the Knights. I think the Roosters will be too good for the Warriors. But if they are to lose, wow. Panic stations at Bondi.
Oh, wow. Really interesting clash because I love I think that, put it this way, and I spoke about this earlier the week. So you've got the Tigers and the Bulldogs that really went aggressive in the market and had these marquee signings, and everyone's talking about Tigers and Bulldogs and how great they were. And, it's going to take time for them to gel, but they were quite disappointing on the weekend.
Yep.
Whereas the Warriors are going out of sight, out of mind. Not only had they a massive clean out, they've got a new coach.
Yeah.
And they put on a performance where they kept the Knights to 12 points, 20 to 12. I like the start of, because it's clearly a rebuild.
Yes.
And so that's great signs that you can open up round one, keep a side to 12 points or less, and get the win.
Yeah.
And so this is a real opportunity for the Warriors to go, okay, we've beaten the Knights, but how about we test ourselves against one of the better sides in the comp?
Well, and you know what? I think they'll just look to the way that the Dolphins took on the Roosters and just didn't hold back. And they have nothing to lose because there'll be very few people expecting them to come over to Sydney and knock off the Roosters. Very few people. So they just need to back themselves and just go, hey boys, let's take it to these blokes.
With the Roosters, now it's only one game, but the thing with the Roosters the last few years is that, and Tom, our producer, he'll be listening closely, is like, I feel like every year they're trying to find out what kind of footy they play. Whereas I think the guy, like Penrith Panthers and Melbourne Storm, they kind of are set at the start of the year. They've got Panthers footy, Storm footy.
Yep.
And I wonder whether, is this a tactic from Trent Robinson where he just builds into years and he sees how it's all going? Or are they really struggling to find what is their identity post back-to-back wins?
Yeah, well, I'm not too sure, mate. To be honest, I'm not too sure because, you need to be at training and you need to be around the club to know what's going on. But, with Brandon Smith joining the club, he's a very unique style of player. So to try and get the best out of him, I guess, you're going to have to allow him to play his style of football as well, rather than say, hey, listen, mate, when you come here, this is the way you need to play. Because, as I said, it's a unique style of footy, and you don't want to sort of hem a guy in like Brandon Smith and say you need to play this way, because I don't feel as though that's going to get the best out of him. So, it's probably, the other players adjusting too to having a guy like Brandon Smith playing in the footy side in such a key position. And then you got a young fellow like Sammy Walker still learning. And again, he's quite a unique type of footballer as well, where, he grew up, playing in a team and a game plan and a style of football, which was very sort of free and flowing and just go out there and play what you see type of thing. There wasn't a whole lot of structure. There wasn't a whole lot of, set plays and all that sort of stuff. It was just like, hey, mate, like if you feel as though you need to run the ball there, run the ball there. If you feel like you want to kick the ball on play 2, kick the ball on play 2. If you want to run backwards to try and put the defence off, run backwards. Like that was the type of stuff that was happening.
Yeah.
When he was playing his football in the lower grades. But I think they, like looking at their lineup, it's
crazy.
It's again like it's a great footy side. Once they do click, they'll be very hard to beat. And it's no matter who they play, they'll be very hard to beat.
All the Roosters need to do, in my opinion, is make finals footy. Just a top 8.
Just get there?
Just get there. And I know that you would rather a consistent year for sure.
Yep.
But I think their squad is so good that they can go on a run. All you got to do is look at last year. It was just that disaster game where everyone got sent off, 2 HIAs.
Yeah.
They probably win that game if Crichton and Tedesco don't get HIA'd off.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to head to a break, and then after the break, we're going to continue previewing the Dolphins. Can they back it up? Raiders, can they get the win? Storm versus the Doggies. We'll see you on the other side. Let's head to the games. On Saturday at 5:30 p.m. at KO Stadium, Redcliffe, Dolphins versus the Raiders. I mean, how do you see? We've got youngster Mason Teague has been named to make his debut and replacing the great Ray Stone. You've got Jordan Rapana. He's out. He's replaced by Albert Hopewadi. How do you see this playing out?
Have we got a? Do we know the update on Ray Stone? It's not the knee injury again, is it?
No, it's not an ACL. I don't think.
Good. Good.
I think it's a PCL. Him sort of
clutching at the knee, and he looked as though like he was
He
frustrated. He
stepped off
may
it.
have done it again, but anyway, that's great news that it's not the ACL. Mate, the Dolphins. I'm all over the Dolphins at the moment.
I'm on the
I'd
bandwagon.
love to see them go 2 from 2. Wouldn't that be? Imagine after round 2,
They're 2 from 2.
look at the table and Dolphins are sitting first.
It would be incredible.
Just awesome.
The special thing for the Dolphins too is like, this is kind of, I guess, pessimistic thinking from the outside looking in, but if they get 2 wins out of the way, like for the whole season, you're bound to jag 4 or 5 more.
Yeah, a couple more, yep.
And then all of a sudden you go, well, we don't have to worry about the spoon. I know that's very negative thinking, but
yes,
it's still to jag 2 wins.
Oh, mate, I completely understand what you're saying because that would be in the back of the mind of everyone at the Dolphins is not wanting to be wooden spooners first year. There's no doubt about that. I was just really super impressed with their game, and again, like the challenge is to get up for this game and play well again. Particularly guys like Branko Lee and Tessie New, who were very good on the weekend. Young fellow Isaiah Katoa playing in the 6 jersey, only 19. Sort of getting an understanding and getting his head around the grueling season that is the NRL season, where you don't get any let up. Like it doesn't matter who you're playing, where they are. It's a difficult 80 minutes you'll play every week. Even if you win most of your matches, they're not easy. Like you don't just turn up there and run through the opposition. Like it's pretty hard going. But when they're led by Jesse Bromwich, Marshall King, Felice Kafusi, Kenny Bromwich, it's I'd like to think that they'll be up for it again. I really do. Although Canberra, they just went down by 1 point to the Cowboys, and I know their first half wasn't great. They weren't really in the match at all, but it was a tough performance. It's real. It's hard to go up to North Queensland early in the season and get a victory. It would have been muggy as they would have been sucking in the big ones. Just trying to get through that 80 minutes of football. But they're heading north again. Difficult thing to do. Just get on the road early and get wins. But I think Ricky Stewart will. I reckon he would have spoke to his players about their performance and saying that, hey, look, that was one that got away from us. We had every opportunity to win that game. Like, look how well we played in the second half. There's a footy side that a lot of people are saying are going to do really well. Talking about the Cowboys.
Yeah.
We can't be too hard on ourselves, but we need to be better. And let's go and do that against the Dolphins.
Mate, before we keep talking about the Dolphins, we just got a text from a bloke named John, and he said, does everyone go for lunch? Because this is the most boring show I've ever listened to. So, thanks, Johnny. Hey,
good on you, John.
Good on you, John, mate.
Well
You're
done.
listening, so that's one listener.
Yeah.
To the Dolphins, you know what I loved heading into it, the game? And look, I still pick the Roosters, so I'm not going to pretend to be, hindsight hero.
Yes.
When Anthony Milford, got dropped from the side and Jesse Bromwich was doing the press conference.
Yep.
Very easy for Jesse to be politically correct and not want to put anyone offside.
Mm-hmm.
He was quite strong in his message to, we need to be better if you're getting dropped and we need, people helping our halves. The message was strong.
Yes.
And I really like to see that because he's not letting the fact that he may put someone offside dictate what the standards will be at the club.
That's right.
And when I see things like that, I go, you know what? Maybe we are. Even me, when they signed the Bromwich brothers and Kofusi, some of these older players, I understood that they would bring experience. But I think that was a really good example of, this is what you're buying when you get a guy like Jesse Bromwich.
Yeah, you buy experience, not only on the field but off the field as well. And that's where the standards, I believe, are set. It's well and truly before you get on the paddock and start training and start playing football matches. It's about the conversations that you have within the locker room, in your meetings, and you talk about expectations of what it will mean to be a first grade player at that club. No matter what club you're playing at, whether it be the Dolphins, a new franchise in the NRL, or the Penrith Panthers, who have won the last 2 comps. It's about having expectations on everyone to say, hey, listen, if you want to be a Panther or a Dolphin or a Raider, whoever it is, these are the standards that you must set all the time. Because if you don't, it's pretty clear you will not be in the side on the weekend.
Yeah. It's it's good signs. Good signs for the Dolphins. Hopefully, well, I mean, look, I want the Raiders to win too. So hopefully it's a great clash. Let's get to Storm versus the Doggies. 7:30, Amy Park, the return to Amy Park. Wishart replaces Cam Munster at 5/8. Penne comes onto the bench. Xavier Coates named to play despite injuring his shoulder last week. Doggies, no changes to the 17 who lost to Seagulls last week. What are your thoughts on this game, mate?
Xavier Coates has been named.
Yeah, they were talking 2-3 weeks when it happened.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's an injury up to what they call it, the SC joint.
SC joint, yeah.
Which is down here where the collarbone meets the clavicle.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not the AC.
Okay.
The AC's up in the shoulder. Yeah, it's down in here. So yeah, pretty annoying position to have an injury because that will just get knocked every training session, every game.
Oh.
But they've named him, so well done to Big Xavier on the wing. Tyron Wishart named at 6 in replacement for Cam Munster. Tyron Wishart, he's a wonderful player. He played about 4 different positions for the Storm last year and did a really good job. I think he's a guy that he's really impressed Craig Bellamy over the last couple of seasons with his involvement and his willingness to play wherever he's needed in this Storm team. Taking on the Doggies, no changes. No changes to the 17 that got beat last week. So Cameron Ciraldo sticking with the same lineup that he went with against Manly. Look, they were well below their best. I think there's some high expectations on the Doggies to do a lot better this year. And I'm a person that has those higher expectations on them. They've recruited some quality players to their footy side. You'd expect them to go out and play better this week than what they did last week. In fairness, in their defence, I thought the sin binning of Kyle Flanagan was rotten timing and it was a pretty ordinary call.
Outrageous.
It's pretty ordinary call.
Outrageous.
He hardly laid a finger on Tommy, who should get a Logie for that performance, just quietly. But it's just, boys, like,
Come on.
Like, you can't make calls like that. And we've seen the significance of that call.
Well, they were in the game.
What it did to the game.
They were in the game.
And look, they may not have gone on to win the game, but that's not the point. While he was off the field in that 10-minute period, they scored 2. They had 2 tries scored against them, and pretty much took the game away from them.
Yeah,
which is what happened. But anyway, let's not beat on about that. I'd like to think that they're going to be much better than what they were in round 1, but the Storm at home, you can't back against them.
No.
I just can't.
I agree, mate. I agree. Just quickly with the Doggies, I think they're in a bit of a strange situation with their spine because they've got Hayes Perham there, who, good solid ball runner, really explosive. Ball playing, probably needs a little bit time to work on it.
Yep.
But it's almost like, Critter's going to come in and play that role.
Yeah.
And then you've got Matty Burton, who I feel like they were hoping that he would be an organising half, but I don't think he's suited to that.
No.
He's played his best footy in centre position, and I still think he's a better 6 than centre, But when he's centre, he can be free and just play what's in front of him.
Yeah.
And I think that at the moment, the Dogs, it may take a little bit longer than expected because not only is Birdo, potentially not going to be that organising half.
Yep.
Obviously, Flano needs to step up, but then also you've got a place, and there's no disrespect to Hayes Perham. Maybe he goes on to keep that spot.
Yes.
But at the moment, it's looking like it's there until Critter arrives.
Yep.
And so I wonder, do they need to sort their spine out sooner rather than later?
What's Matt Burton's preferred position though?
Be interesting to see what he would prefer to play.
We might have to get him on the show.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he put his hand up to play 6. I'm sure he did.
I like him
in any way. I think Kyle Flanagan really needs to step up and take that role. I know he's only a young man, but he's not new to the game. Like he's been around for quite some time now. He's played a fair bit of footy. Just needs to take control of this footy side along with Reid Marnie. I think he'll have much more influence over this footy side this week. But I'm backing the Storm. As I said, like it's very hard to back against this team in Melbourne. Almost unbeatable. I'm going Storm for the win.
I'm going Storm too. Now, Tigers versus Knights. Api Coruscant has been named to start. Joe Offengalway starts at prop. Alex Twal moves to the bench. Recruit Bateman still remains on the sideline. Dane Gagai returns for the at centre for the Knights. Adam Elliott out with a groin injury. How do you see this game playing out, Smithy?
Tigers at Leichhardt again on a Sunday. Oh, mate, I remember playing the Tigers at Leichhardt. It was almost the hardest place to play. So hard. They always seem to, play like a different footy side, although last week they got beat there. So there goes my theory. But I just remember just going there and it's just an uncomfortable place to play. Huge crowds all the time, and which is great at these suburban grounds.
Yeah, for sure.
Look, I think they'll win.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they'll win. The Knights, and we spoke about the Knights last week, talking about their roster and their lineup on paper. Impressive footy side. Mm-hmm. Really impressive footy side. And again, it's not easy going to New Zealand playing the Warriors, but I just thought they were a little bit disappointing. Both teams losing first up. So I'm going to go to the West Tigers, particularly if Appy starts. Particularly if Appy starts. And playing at Leichhardt, it's a very hard place to go and win footy games, as I said earlier. And so I'm going to lean with the Tigers with very little confidence.
Mate, I'm going to go Knights, but also with very little confidence.
Yeah, okay.
Look, I think that Appy starting is almost a game changer, but the Knights, I don't know, maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I feel like it's there. The game, it's going to come. We're going to see that game.
Yeah.
Ponga, he played pretty well last week. He had made 11 tackles, only one miss. In attack, I think he had a couple try assists. So I look at it and I go, okay, he's firing. He's keen to go. Lockie Miller had 11 tackle breaks. I think he ran for about 200 metres. I just think this might be the game where the Knights fire up. I hope anyway. I hope. But if the thing is the Knights I can see winning by a little bit, whereas the Tigers, if they click, I can see them winning by a substantial margin. Okay. But I just don't know whether the Tigers are going to click yet because they seem so disjointed the other day. Super, super just disjointed.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm going to go the Knights, but I'm not very confident. Now, what do you think about Dragons v the Titans, 6:15, Nostrata, Jubilee Stadium. Bird starts at lock. Hunt is punted in the halves by Sullivan. Moses Mbai starts at hooker. Jacob Little coming off the bench. Toby Couchman has been named to make his debut off the bench. And then with the Titans, no change to the 17 that beat the Tigers last week. Kieran Foran has been named despite suffering a knee, but we've found out whilst on the show that it'll be Campbell.
Playing in the halves. Jaden Campbell.
Jaden Campbell playing in the halves.
Yep, so he'll play in the halves. Kieran Foran missing. Just I guess wondering what impact that will have, Kieran Foran not being there. Having spoken to a few people involved with the Titans over the preseason, they've been so happy with the way Kieran's come in and bought into the club and what they're about, and just the confidence that he's brought to the squad, and I guess having that confidence that he shares or has given to those younger players has made them into a very different footy side. Whether that now has an effect with him not being there. And after speaking with Benny Hunt earlier in the show, Kempy, he sounds pretty confident in the team that they're putting out for round one. They've had the opportunity to sit back last week and just watch the footy and particularly watch the Titans game closely and have an understanding of what they're going to face this weekend. I'm going to back the Titans, though.
Really?
In a close one.
Okay.
In a close one. Because, as I said at the start of the show, really impressed with the way that the Titans hung in there early last week. They were put under a fair bit of pressure defensively last week. They hung in, and they come away with a good victory away from home. I think they can back that up again this weekend.
I'm going the Dragons, mate.
Oh, the Drags.
Yeah, I think a foreign-less Titans.
Okay. Yep.
I don't think they hang in if foreign isn't there on the field with them.
Yeah, right.
But I do think if Campbell can, come and kill it,
yes,
all of a sudden there's a bunch of points in them.